Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Session 3 of the 13th Annual Patient Safety Summit. We are so excited to have you here today with us. We'd like to thank our sponsors, our platinum sponsor, Methodist Health, and our other platinum sponsor, which is Texas Health Resources, and we have a short video to show. Okay, thank you, Texas Health and Methodist Health, for being our platinum sponsors. We also would like to thank our silver sponsors, Abbott Point of Care, ACHE of North Texas, American Heart Association, Group 1 Background Screening, Health Catalyst, Interactive Quality, Konica Minolta, and Vital Tech. Because of our sponsors, we are able to keep the cost of the Patient Safety Summit down, and we do appreciate them. We'd also really like to thank our Summit Planning Committee. These people volunteered their time to put together this awesome lineup of speakers we have. So if you know one of them, give them a pat on the back for doing a great job, and thank you to the committee. We'd like to let you know that we accepted 10 posters, which are on our webpage. You can review those posters and complete a short quiz to be entered to win an autographed copy of our keynote speaker, Megan Johnson's Generation Inc. To be eligible to claim your CEs, you have to attend 85% of the session and complete the evaluation. The evaluation will not open until all the sessions are complete, so it will open on October 2nd, and you can find the evaluation link on our webpage. You must complete it by October 16th, and the CE certificate will be mailed to you within 1 to 2 weeks after the evaluation, and emailed to you, not mailed. Please note that everything is on our webpage. It is on the bottom of all of our slides. So if you need anything answered, go to our webpage. All of the presentations and session recordings will be on our webpage. And as a reminder, CEs will only be awarded for live attendance, but if you like the session and want to share it, you can view it after the fact. There was a conflict of interest found in this session, but that has been resolved. Any questions for the speakers, please use the question icon. Question will be answered at the end of each session and time permitting. For our first session, we're going to let all four of our speakers go, and then we will take questions at the end of their session. At this time, I would like to introduce our first speaker. This is for our patient and family engagement section. Ann Van Dyke has been an RN for over 30 years, having worked in quality and risk for the last 14 years. She is currently working at Medical City Denton as the Vice President of Quality. She has a BSN and MBA from Texas Women's University and an MJ in Health Law from Loyola University Chicago School of Law, and is currently in school completing her DNP. Wow, Ann, you're a busy woman with a lot of credentials behind you. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Ann, and I am going to give you control of the keyboard. Take it away, Ann.
Thank you, Patty, and thank you for that introduction. So I want to start with Medical City Healthcare's mission statement. Above all else, we are committed to the care and improvement of human life. And that mission statement is right in line with the work done by our Patient Family Advisory Council. So Medical City Denton has had a Patient Family Advisory Council, or PFAC, in place since 2014. At the end of 2017, we really felt that we needed to move our PFAC forward. And so we worked to recruit more members. For a long time, we just had 2 or 3, sometimes only 1 community member attending our meetings. So we also, on top of recruiting more folks and moving it forward, we wanted to focus on an agenda that would engage our PFAC in patient-focused projects. So for example, some of the things that we focused on are using our PFAC members to help identify gaps in some of our processes around the hospital. We had them sample our patient menu and give their feedback. And they also came up with some ideas, such as a special menu for visitors to know exactly how to order the meal trays and how much they cost, as well as options around the area. So let's start with why have a PFAC? Well, patients, of course, are at the center of what we do, and they've got to be part of our quality improvement processes. The patient and family engagement translates to an active partnership at all levels across healthcare. So you've got those folks advocating for the voice of the patient. After all, they've been patients, or they've been the family with the patient. And so their feedback is really important. The patient engagement ultimately leads to improved health outcomes because they're able to give those suggestions and that feedback. And patient engagement is so important to improved health outcomes. When you think about their medication management issues or speaking up for safety, that's critically important. So the PFAC is one of the many ways that engagement can be promoted. So specifically, what is a PFAC? Well, it is a committee of the hospital, and in addition to hospital leadership, a PFAC includes those advisors, which are the family members, the patients. We also have a student from a local college to kind of give that perspective. We meet regularly to collaborate on improvement initiatives. Ours meets monthly, 9 times a year. And members also serve on other hospital committees. So for example, we have one PFAC member that serves on our Quality Improvement Council, and we have another one that serves on our Infection Prevention Committee. They sign confidentiality agreements, of course, but they really have a unique perspective to give us and bring back to the PFAC group to share with the other PFAC members. So again, that advisor, they are a former patient or family member, a representative of the community, and they're able to provide that patient perspective. And all of these folks are really engaged in helping us to meet the goals that we set. It's really important when you're recruiting advisors that you do go through an application and interview process, and you want to make sure that that is what they recognize their goal as. You want to make sure somebody does not have a personal agenda that they bring to the PFAC. So an important aspect of the Patient Family Advisory Council is that patient voice, and that is really valuable. There's a saying, nothing about me without me, where that quote really stands out to me as how important it is to have that patient perspective. After all, it's their care that we're managing. And again, those patients and families offer unique perspectives, and their care improves the care that we provide. So some of the areas of impact that we found that our PFAC has contributed to has been patient experience. One of our members, he started out as a member. He had a hospital stay at our hospital, and he brought back, the next time he was back at our PFAC meeting, an experience he had where, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, the nights that he was there, he'd hear this noise, squeaky wheel, and he found out it was a linen cart, of all things, that was being brought down the hallway, and it had a terrible sound that woke him up. Of course, as staff, we often hear these sounds, we have these conversations, and sometimes we don't think twice about it. It's just part of the usual background noise. But when he brought that back, we put steps in place to check all of the wheels, make sure that they weren't squeaking, and we've asked our staff to be aware of that issue as well as other issues at night that may disrupt patient sleep. The PFAC is an important part of quality improvement. They have brought invaluable feedback to us after attending our Quality Improvement Council. They're an important part of patient safety. And community relations, they have become some of our biggest cheerleaders. All of them are involved in our social media. We have an excellent Facebook page, for example, for our hospital, that we have a lot of folks who have liked it, joined it, and make comments all the time. And they are one of those folks. They take information about our hospital back to their neighbors and other folks in the community. And they've also been a piece that has helped improve our overall hospital culture. So this is a picture of a recent, after a PFAC meeting. And we get all of our community members polo shirts. They wear the navy blue, and then the hospital leaders already have the red. And so we wanted to take this picture that we could put out in social media, put out in our newsletter for our staff. And we're continually thinking of ways that we can encourage our staff to get to know more about our PFAC and work with them. Right now, with the pandemic, we're a little bit constrained because we are not, of course, allowing volunteers into our hospital, and our PFACs are actually volunteers. So we're having to do our meetings by WebEx. However, that keeps them from being able to be here in the hospital to engage in those things, such as, secret shopper and things like that. And as I said, they are volunteers. So our members of the PFAC complete volunteer orientation. They go through the process, sign the documents. That includes making sure that they've had their vaccines and all of those things. Again, the committee meets monthly in the evenings. That seems to work with everybody's schedule. If you haven't started a PFAC, you would want to look and see what sort of schedule works best for your PFAC group. And as I said, they sit on the Quality Improvement Council and IP Committee. We're also looking into our Sepsis Committee and our Stroke Committee. So some final thoughts on PFACs. I will say that putting a PFAC in place or doing what we did about 4 years ago, where we wanted to recruit more members, move it to the next level, that takes a lot of courage. Another step that took a lot of courage for all of us was having a PFAC member involved in some of our hospital committees. It's a little, we're sharing all of our information, and so that can be a little scary, but it's been an excellent process for us. Your PFAC should be structured to meet the needs of your organization. We all serve different communities. We have different demographics, so you want to take all of those things into consideration when you're starting out your PFAC. And again, remember that a PFAC must support your mission statement and be completely on board, which is, for us, above all else, we are committed to the care and improvement of human life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. That was great, very informative. We appreciate that. If any of the audience has questions, you can be typing those into the questions pane, and we will take questions when all of our speakers for the patient and family engagement section are done. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Laura Burnside. She has over 20 years experience leading hospital leaders and clinicians through culture change, resulting in the highest levels of engagement, experience, and operational excellence. She is currently the Senior Vice President, Chief Experience Officer at JPS Health Network in Fort Worth. Prior to joining JPS, Laura spent 12 years working as a leadership and organizational coach for a large healthcare consulting firm. She's worked with thousands of hospital leaders and physicians at over 150 organizations. Her concentration on building and sustaining a culture of excellence has led to organizations to achieve their highest outcomes. She's also the author of a book titled Believe in the Journey of Your Dreams. Thank you, Laura, for joining us, and I will give you control of the mouse in 1 second. Okay, you should have control. Oh, are you on mute, Laura?
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Now you can hear me. Okay. So, Patty, I am not seeing the slides on the side on my computer.
You should see the slide that the audience is seeing.
I see my slide, but I don't see where they can be changed.
So just hit enter or page down.
Okay, and it'll work from there?
It should.
Well, it's not. Would you like to advance them for me? I apologize. It looks very different than it did in our prep. So
no problem. Just tell me next slide when you're ready.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I apologize for that issue. Like Anne, I am actually going to start with our JPS mission. And the reason that I'm doing that is because it's not just something that we say here at JPS, it actually guides our every action. And as a community hospital, our patient-family engagement looks similar to other locations, but it also might look a little bit different than others. And so when we think about transforming healthcare delivery for the communities we serve, for us, transformation starts with our patients, our families, but it also involves our community. And so when we transform, we do so according to what our community needs are. And so when things like a pandemic, like we're in right now, start or happen, we actually can move forward with the needs of our community because we understand what those are. And what I think is important about this is that everything that I'll talk about today was actually part of who we were before COVID hit. And so, I think that's an important lesson that we've learned through this pandemic is that things that you were doing before are the foundational elements for who you are today. And it's just really who we are and it's what we do. So even though we did tweak some things as we went through the pandemic, at the end of the day, our engagement methods remained the same. You can switch slides if you would, please. So I'll talk about 3 different ways. I won't spend a lot of time on our PFACs because you're going to hear a lot about that from the other speakers. But it is an element and a way that we do gather feedback and engage our patients. There are 3 main ways, though. One is through our PFACs, one is through caring for our community, and the other is caring in crisis. And the 3 of those we have found is what allows us to provide high quality care for our community. So the PFACs they're a very important part of what we do here at JPS, and you just heard a lot about that from Ann, and you're going to hear more about that from Brennan and Brittany in just a minute. We have several of these throughout the network. I wanted to highlight our behavioral health PFAC today because it's been a huge part of the care that we provide at JPS, especially at this point in time when behavioral health has become such an important part of healthcare these days. And our PFAC in behavioral health has done some really amazing work. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. The care that we provide to the community is part of, again, what we do and who we are. And then the caring in crisis piece is more about the partnerships that we've established that allow us to take care of our community in a really effective way. If you will switch slides for me again, please. So I mentioned our Behavioral Health Advisory Council, and again, I'm highlighting this one because the pandemic presents such challenges for those with mental health issues, and also for the families and the support people, support members for our patients in behavioral health. Some of the key features about this particular PFAC is that it's really person-centered, and it's providing care within a recovery system of care. And so the Family Advisory Council for Behavioral Health was started in 2003, and they really are committed to creating a better experience for our patients and their families who receive mental health treatment here at JPS. There are about a dozen or so advisory members who are patients, family members, and then we also have some behavioral health leaders and supervisors, and our spiritual care team is also a part of that. They've had some great accomplishments within this PFAC. Just to highlight a few of them, they have actually participated in multiple performance improvement efforts. Some of those resulted in reduced readmissions, for instance, of our patients back into the system. Another one is reviewing significant behavioral health direct care policies. They have also been profiled by the Institute of Patient and Family-Centered Care in a report for Canadian mental health based on best practices in the United States. So it's really a robust and engaged group of people that come together to help us with special projects. Some of those that they're working on now are leading a work group for psychiatric advanced directives, preparing for behavioral health annual mental health recovery celebration, and that's a celebration that we do on a yearly basis to celebrate addiction recovery for our patients, and our team members participate that in well. It's quite a special event, and our PFAC is participates in making sure that that event goes really, really well. And so, as we continue, we will continue to bring this group together to work on really helping us with some of the things that come up post-pandemic that we may not even be aware of at this time. And so, again, I go back to what we had in place prior to the pandemic is only helping us get through this and take us beyond. If you would change the slide for me again, please. As far as caring for our community, as I previously mentioned, being a community hospital adds a little bit of responsibility for us in hearing not only from those patients and family members who come through our doors, but also from our community members. And so I'll just touch on a couple ways that we actually get feedback and provide services to our patients and families based on that feedback. So about 4 years ago, we implemented a community session called Trauma Talk. And this was an idea of our lead for our trauma program, Dr. Gandhi. And he had had this idea for many years. And so when we launched it, it was really kind of a dream come true for him. And he invited me to attend the first session. And it was really an amazing event. And I watched patients and family members who had been in trauma situations interact with our care team, who also is involved in trauma. And what they did was they went through, and they still do, go through all kinds of holistic care. So kind of that mind, body, spirit care. And you see it come to life. And the connection between the care team and the patients and families who are really identifying different emotions and different responses to a trauma that they've experienced is really powerful. And part of the work that we do through Trauma Talk involves a partnership that we have with an EMDR therapist here locally. And because of that partnership, we were actually able to bring EMDR therapy to our team members through the pandemic. And so again, I think it goes to taking the things that you had before the pandemic and bringing them in have allowed us to continue to care for our patients, families, and communities, but also for our team members in a really effective way. And you're going to hear more about that from Leanne Franklin during the 11:30 session today. Another way that we involve our community is through what we call our Joint Council. And this was established over 10 years ago. It's about 50 or so Joint Council members, and they are from the community and from JPS leadership. And we generally do them pre-pandemic by lunch, but since the pandemic, we meet virtually. And our CEO, Robert Early, always opens those sessions. And then there's a topic that's presented that's relevant to the community, and we gain feedback from those members on ways that we can improve. So they've helped us with simple things, even as far as improving signage for the cafeteria and the way that our patients and families find their way there, which is, if you've been to our hospital, that is not an easy feat. And it allows us a time for questions and sharing of ideas and connection to those Joint Council members, which is really, really special. And then the third part of this that I'll mention today is really the cultural connection point. At JPS, we interpreted last year for about 120 different languages and dialects. And we had about 6.8 million minutes of interpretation that we provided. So there are about 45 interpreters that we have here in-house. And not only do they help our patients and families when they come to JPS for care, but they also spend time within their communities speaking about the importance of things like primary care. Primary care is not common in other parts of the world. And so they educate their communities and allow them to understand the importance of having a primary care physician and gain feedback from them so that we can develop an environment here at JPS that is full of inclusion, regardless of what area of the world, what religious background, any types of diversity and inclusion efforts that we need to have are actually in place so that we are providing those effectively for our patients. If you would change to the last slide, please, or the next slide, I guess. Caring in crisis. I mentioned partnerships with our community, and these are really critical for us at JPS. With the input from our patients and our community, we're really able to leverage learning and partnerships to create innovation and in-the-moment solutions. So things like as the pandemic hit, we realized that there may be a large surge. And so one of our physicians, Dr. Davis, had the thought of being able to provide an in-home program for COVID patients. And so to date, we've served over 1,300 patients in their home, which has allowed us to treat them in an environment that helps them recover faster because they're in their own home environment. And it also freed up beds for us in the event that surge came. And like I said, so far we've treated over 1,300 patients and have had tremendous success from that program. Allowing us to not bring the community to the hospital, but putting it in their homes is a way that we provide health care again to our community. We also partner with Tarrant County Public Health, and we were able to open a homeless shelter at the convention center in Fort Worth as an emergency facility to treat our patients who are without homes at the moment. And that was really a special partnership that we had and allowed us to provide some pretty special care. And then we also partner with UNT in preparing for things like morgue overflow. In the event that we ran into that surge and had some an enormous number of deaths, unfortunately, from that, we wanted to be prepared. We did not experience that, fortunately, but UNT Health Science Center was a tremendous partner in helping us get prepared again to help us with meeting the needs of our community. And then lastly, I'll speak about virtual family meetings. And again, family meetings has been something that we've done always at JPS, but with the pandemic and the restricted visitation, we had to change that practice. And so we got feedback from our patients and families that they would like to try virtual family meetings. And so we have connected them via iPad, FaceTime, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, whatever the mechanism is. And we continue those meetings with our families virtually. And what we found is wonderful success and outcomes from that. And so that will be a technique that we continue long after the pandemic is gone. And if you'll go to the last slide for me, I'm going to actually end where I began, which is around transforming healthcare delivery for the communities we serve. It's just who we are. It's what we do. It's what we do for our patients. It's what we do for our team members. It's what we do for our families and ultimately for our community. And what I know is, as we continue to learn more from the engagement that we have with these entities, we will continue to transform our efforts even farther. And so I'm really grateful to be a part of these conversations, because I think all of us would agree that in order for us to provide the best level of care to our patients, we have to understand what's important to them. And so as we gain feedback in a variety of ways, it allows us to change the way that we treat so that we can meet the needs and better anticipate the needs proactively of everyone who's depending on us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. That was awesome and great work that JPS is doing. You must be very proud. That is awesome. I would like to introduce our next two speakers. Keep the questions coming in the question pane. I'm seeing them come in. Thank you. So our next two speakers, let me change my slide, sorry. There we go. We have Brennan Lewis and Brittany Hendrickson from Children's. Brennan is the Director of Patient Education and Engagement. She serves as an expert in health literacy and provides oversight for the health education across the continuum of care. In her role, she chairs the Health Education and Literacy HEAL Committee and is responsible for the operations of the Get Well Network Interactive Patient Care System. She's very passionate about patient-family engagement and works to ensure the patient-family voice is present throughout children's health. Brittany Hendrickson, 12 years ago, started as a respiratory therapist at Children's Health. Since then, it's been her mission to make life better for children. Her journey at Children's has included working in the ER, PICU, and home care for 11 years. Last year, she stepped away from the bedside and started working with the Patient Education and Engagement Department. She's enjoyed learning how to make a difference for their families in her role. I am going to give you guys control of the keyboard. And you should have control, and if you do not, just tell me next slide.
Next slide, please, Patty. Like the other presenters, we'll start with Children's Health Mission, and so our mission is to make life better for children. And over the last couple of years, we've really grown to even expand on that. Being in a pediatric facility, it really is make life better for children, for those who love them, and for those who enable and provide their care. And so we really expanded on our mission, and it really drives all that we do for the pediatric population we serve. Next slide, please. So most of you are familiar in this area with Children's Health. We have 2 hospitals in the Dallas area. Our flagship hospital is our main campus, and we also have an outpatient rehab hospital in Dallas as well. We have a Plano campus that is continuing to grow and broaden its scope to reach more patients out in the North Texas market. And we also have a pretty robust telehealth program that since COVID has really propelled forward and is adding new programs by the day. Next slide, please. So why FAN? So FAN stands for Family Advisor Network. For those of you that know me and those of you who don't, one of the things that I love is an acronym. It's always been something that resonates. And years ago, we had family advisors in our system, but it was in a varying capacity. So certain clinical programs had advisory councils. We had some families that sat on our quality committee, but we really didn't have an infrastructure to fully support. And so a couple of years back, we launched FAN, and FAN really helps us to establish that infrastructure that we really needed to drive this program forward and really build positive solution-oriented collaboration with our families. We do include current patient families as well as former. They each bring a different perspective, and we value all of them. We really do encourage their participation because they bring such a unique perspective and experience that help us drive meaningful improvements. And there are so many times that we are trying to improve patient safety efforts or quality improvement efforts, and sometimes we miss the mark, and part of that is because we are not including the patient voice and the patient perspective, and so they really do bring that voice to the table that we may have otherwise missed. They are certainly critical to our transformation into a patient-centric healthcare system. And we are working to build a culture of communication, partnership, and engagement. And I can say since we launched FAN in 2018, we really have become an organization that's co-designing. And I don't say that lightly because it definitely has been a cultural shift for us to include families in various projects that might be otherwise considered sensitive. So we really have been able to move to becoming more of a patient-centric healthcare system with the startup of FAN. Next slide, please. So the next few minutes, I'm just going to go over just some of our FAN partnerships and why we designed the structure that we did. And then the last piece, Brittany will go over our newest partnership that we're really excited to share with you. Next slide. So Family Advisor Network is made up of 7 partnerships. We did that because when looking at starting a robust program, I reached out and did several benchmark with lots of different healthcare systems to see what they were offering, looked in the literature, and several different roles were emerging. And so I felt like it was really important to capture each unique partnership and in varying ways to include family advisors in a healthcare system. Next slide, please. Oh, I probably missed one important key feature, which you can see here. And the middle of our model really keeps that patient family at the center of all that we do. Our first partnership is Family Advisory Boards. So many years ago, we had one and it kind of faltered and fell apart. And then we moved more into clinical program advisory councils. But we really lost the value of having families that really serve more on a higher level organization or system specific initiatives. So one of the things that we brought back were family advisory boards. We do have, we felt like it was important to keep a connection from, the connection to the clinical advisory councils in each patient population specific area. So we brought members from each of those into our boards, and then we consider other community members that we care for as well. We have one on the Dallas campus, the Plano campus, and we also included one for staff. So when we launched FAN, we were getting so many questions on, well, my kids are in the system. Can I serve on the family advisory board or in some capacity? And so we really felt like it brought a new perspective to what we were providing, because they serve a dual role. They are employees of Children's Health, but they also have children in our system. So they really brought an amazing viewpoint that we hadn't considered before. So we have launched the Staff Family Advisory Board, and then we are looking to expand to our Children's House as well. Some of the projects that we worked on with our boards, and this doesn't even quantify all the work that they have been doing, but they were integral in our kiosk, implementing kiosk and really touchless check-in. They helped, do visioning and really promoting the number of times that our families would talk about wanting Starbucks coffee. And so we really listened to that, and not only made our patient families happy, but certainly our staff too. And so that was an exciting project. MyChart, we really were driving that as we really wanted to promote sign up of MyChart so our families can be connected, get health information, access and messaging to their providers. But what we actually learned is we had a lot of opportunity in MyChart. And so this last year, we spent a lot of time working with our FABs and really redesigning MyChart to make it more meaningful for them. And then planning and designing. Our FAB members are really involved in all of the expansion, and they truly are co-designing along with us from start to finish. Next slide. Our next partnership is Clinical Service Advisors. We have, these are patient population specific, and there really is value to having these because they can focus on unit and department level initiatives, and some of the outcomes that they have had in the last year is working on NICU Passport to Home. It's really a creative, innovative way to engage with families in discharge planning and ensuring that they're prepared to go home to take care of their child from the NICU. We also had advisors in the Endocrine Clinical Advisory Council really co-design a diabetes app that really guides and manages care in the home for diabetic patients, and that was a really great and exciting project. We have our advisors helping with patient education videos that are meaningful to them, especially when families are new to a particular journey. And so families really wanted to be the face of helping other families through this, and then also providing healthcare expertise from different disciplines, from social work and child life, and just really helping families prepare to understand what that journey is going to look like and who's really there to support them. And then family resource guides has been a big one in each of these programs. Next slide. We have family advisors that sit on our committee and councils. This is actually a little bit more challenging to keep our advisors engaged. It's an area that we definitely are going to continue to work in. We do have family involvement in our quality and patient safety committee. So at the highest level of our organization, we have families sitting in these meetings and really bringing the family voice. Some of the areas we've had a little bit of drop off in is CLABSI, CAUTI, HAPI, and really having family involved. And I would say a real big learning here is really when you involve a family advisor in these committees, it's incredibly important to have a liaison that really helps to make the family important, but also to help them engage into that conversation in a meaningful way. Next slide. Short-term projects, there's always a need. These bubble up from time to time. We do pull in either existing or new advisors, but we're focused on design and construction or focus group related topics. And so these are pretty cool. We had families come in when we redesigned. The pictures on the right-hand side are from our renovation of our PICU. And one of the things, I talked about a cultural shift, and that was that initially, they wanted to bring in families to really advise after the fact, after the design was done. And we really advocated that we're shifting, design with me, don't just design it for me. And so we brought the families in, and the perspective that they brought, it really did change the design. And luckily they weren't too far down the road. But this bottom picture really shows, and it may be hard to see, but it shows an area, families that have a child in the PICU, they don't want to leave the bedside to even take a quick break. And so what we decided to do, and from their input, was put together these small little respite areas that have a little table, a coffee maker, and just various things to meet those needs, so they never have to leave the unit or go very far from their child. They can just step out and they can come back in. But that was a direct design and input from the families. And we did actually have a couple of children that had been in our intensive care unit too, and they brought a great perspective as well. Next slide. Family Mentors is a fantastic program. If you don't have this at your healthcare system, it really is such a valuable resource. But there's something to be said about when we support our patient family from a healthcare team perspective versus how families can really support other families. They come in and meet with families, and they support them from a perspective of I've been there. And it sometimes allows these families to ask questions that they may not otherwise ask. Now, we have a very, very intense program that is partnered with our volunteer services. And so they get a lot of training, and we do a lot of simulated conversations with them to ensure that they're prepared for some questions that might come their way, and also how do you connect back to resources from the healthcare system to make sure that the family's getting what they need based on what they're hearing. They provide helpful resources that they found helpful in their journey, and so it's just a really great program. We look forward to expanding this beyond where the locations we have them today. I will say COVID-19 has presented challenges here because this is a face-to-face meeting typically, and so we have shifted to more telephonic mentoring, and also investigating the use of telehealth to really provide that virtual face-to-face encounter. Next slide. And the last one that I'm going to touch on is story sharing, and that is the power of hearing the perspective for whatever you're trying to drive, whatever strategy or project that you're trying to implement. When you hear the perspective of a family and the way that they can share their story, really helps to drive meaning. I'll share with you, we recently working on event prevention, and one of the things that we did to launch a new committee is have a family share their story, and it's been incredibly powerful for them to be able to participate in that way. I'm going to go ahead and transfer over to Brittany. She's going to talk about our last partnership, and that is our virtual advisors.
Thank you, Brennan. Hello, everyone. So in 2019, we started talking about ways to find innovation for our Family Advisor Network. And one of the ideas that came up was a virtual advisor community. And through some hard work, in 2020, we were able to launch our virtual advisor community. It's called Children's Health Insiders, and it really has helped us go from we think we know what our families want to we know what our families want. And so we're really able to make validated decisions based on their experience and feedback to help our mission to make life better for children. Next slide, please. So the first thing we had to do was find ways to recruit families, and we worked with our marketing department to use an email campaign of people that have been in our system over the past 12 to 18 months. You can see that we really strived to get some diversity, and so we focused on geographic area with our northern market and Dallas market. We looked at payer, we looked at relationship to the patient, and so currently we have 256 members that we have been able to recruit over the past 2.5 months. And so we're really excited about that, and we will certainly continue recruiting. Next slide, please. Projects completed. So since our launch a few months ago, we have done several projects. These are some of the main projects that we've done. We had members of our community post questions to our CEO, Chris Durovich, and he in turn took those questions and created one of his Ask Chris podcast that specifically went to our families. We had families name our asthma app. It will be called Asthma Buddy. Families are working with us to revamp our admission resource notebook. And we also were able to launch a COVID-19 survey to ask families what their experience has been, what their expectations are of us when they return, and what they need to feel informed about the changes with COVID-19. All of this, we're able to use the data analysis from our platform and return that to the requester in forms of we can do different things like pie charts, word clouds, different infographics, and so we're able to return that data feedback to the author of the survey and kind of close that loop with them. Next slide, please. We also have a member hub. We felt like it was really important to give back to our members of the community because they are giving us their time. And so we do share our survey results with them. We also provide them with different health and wellness articles that would be beneficial for their families. We post parenting podcasts for them. We also share our Twitter feed in our platform, and we also post upcoming children's health events for them in case they want to engage in other ways. We felt like this was really needed for our families, and we've had great responses to it. And so we'll continue to develop that member hub as we learn more about what our families want and need from that. Next slide. So lessons learned. We did learn during this, because of COVID, email recruiting was a bit more difficult. Normal response rates are about 20%. We experienced about 10 to 12%. And so we're having to look at different ways to recruit members. Diversity challenges. We are currently seeking opportunities to engage our Spanish speaking population. We do know that in Texas, we have a large Spanish speaking population, and so we want to make sure we diversify in a way that those community members can participate. Survey submission. So we did learn engage your leadership early. Right now, so many things are about COVID, and you may not have as many survey submissions as you would like in the beginning, and so engaging them early to teach them about the platform, know what outcomes they can get and why it's so important to keep these family members engaged and utilize them for their feedback. And so we've learned to engage that leadership team through some different organizational communications. Next slide. And that's the end of our presentation. So thank you so much. You can contact us if you have any questions at fan@childrens.com.
Thank you both. Again, great work at Children's. We should be very proud of all of our hospitals in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Great work happening. We had some very good questions come in, but unfortunately we are out of time. So what we will do is we will compile those questions, get them answered, and send them out to everybody who has attended this session today. So I apologize for that, but we want to make sure we stay on time and honor your time. So our next session is with Valerie Lemon. Valerie is a registered nurse specializing in patient safety, quality, and healthcare analytics. She currently serves as the Product Development Vice President for Patient Safety at Health Catalyst. So Valerie, in 1 second, I'm going to give you control. Okay, Valerie, you should have control.
Thank you, Patty. Macy. Oh, all right, looks like I'm in business here. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to join the Patient Safety Summit today. I wanted to just talk about patient safety in healthcare organizations today, what I'm observing and what I've experienced myself as a nurse and working in safety and quality, and how it applies to our safety culture, some advanced analytic solutions, and then we'll see if we have some time for questions today. So the first point I want to make here is we all get into healthcare because we want to help patients. We want to help families. We just heard about patient and family engagement. And this quote by Dr. Bloomfield, there are some patients we cannot help, there are none we cannot harm, really resonates with me in my experience as a nurse and working at the bedside and feeling tied, feeling like my hands were tied many times and doing the right thing because of either supplies or not enough staffing. And do I really have the pathway that I can escalate when I see that there are issues? But we all want to do the right thing, and often the system doesn't allow us to do that. When we look at the impact of patient safety across the system, we are not just seeing patient harm events. And yes, that is what we all think about when we think about patient harm. We think about the impact on families and lives lost. But it really has a larger impact on our overall healthcare organization. And really what it comes down to, as you see here, is this decreased bottom line. But all of that accumulates through our cost of care, how that impacts our patient care. We see higher infection rates. It impacts our healthcare information technology and our usability with that, and our workforce. The World Health Organization for World Patient Safety Day focused on workforce safety. So this is also something that doesn't just impact patients. This impacts our workforce. We see burnout. We see second victims from patient safety events that occur, which is very devastating when we hear about lives lost related to second victims. And we have high turnover in healthcare organizations. And what this relates to is we have litigation and penalties. We have accreditation loss. We have human capital loss. And this has an overall impact of $146 billion in the US. We all hear the numbers of how many patients are harmed every day, and there's a lot of literature that goes back and forth about what the actual numbers are. And really, I think that's part of the focus issue, is we squabble over the numbers rather than focusing on the fact that we can do better and we can incorporate better systems to make sure that we're all doing the best that we can do. So as we look at the impact across our organizations of patient safety and not being able to efficiently attack this, what are the items that are clouding our vision? And we all hear the buzzwords of just culture, high reliability, zero harm. These are all things that we're achieving and striving to achieve. But there are a lot of things that get in our way. One of them is limited insight. We have insufficient data, reactive approaches, unsafe cultures, adoption, burnout, unsustained improvement, communication, and all of this impacts our ability to impact those numbers of patient safety. It impacts our ability to drive down patient harm because we are not doing it in a unified approach. So what I want to focus on now is pulling out a couple of these words and a couple of these phrases so that we can focus on what are we really trying to improve. So when I look at our current processes, safety culture is something that has always stuck out to me as a healthcare professional and somebody that has worked in numerous healthcare organizations. I've seen many different cultures, and it's something that I really feel is undervalued, and it's something that we don't really assess regularly. And what I mean by that is a lot of healthcare organizations will do safety culture surveys, and they collect data on how well do you feel you can speak up towards your patient safety events, or how do you feel you can communicate with your leadership about things that you feel could be improved. And so we collect these numbers, but my own observation in working with many healthcare organizations over the years is we collect these numbers, and really what we're focusing on is the numbers and where do we lay with the other units, or how do we stack up against other healthcare organizations in our area. And we're not really focusing on what those things are telling us, and we're not looking at our reflective approach on how we can improve that. Another issue is that we separate quality and safety departments. There is a significant overlap between the two, but often we have different leadership in quality, we have different leadership in safety, but we're often collecting the same numbers. We're looking at pressure injuries and falls, but risk management may be looking at this from a serious safety event approach, whereas quality is trying to look at how many pressure injuries have we had over the last 6 months. And often we don't talk to one another. These departments are collecting the same data. They might be collecting it in slightly different ways with slightly different outcomes. And this isn't really a failure of healthcare organizations. It's a response to what healthcare in the United States is. We're encouraged to report numbers for CMS, for magnet status, and for the Joint Commission. There are a lot of reasons that we collect this data and we report it. And then another thing is that frontline teams are not involved in the critical decision making. One of the biggest learnings for me was when I was working in a hospital doing quality and safety, and it was my responsibility to collect data on the infusion pump process. And we were using reports from Alaris and collecting data to find how many times a pump had been overridden with their hard guardrails or the soft guardrails. And one of my leaders said, well, we have to try to get these numbers down, but nobody could tell me or anybody else on our team why people were overriding that. And a report from the Alaris pump didn't really tell us anything besides how often it was happening. It doesn't really tell you the root cause of that. And if healthcare professionals are not reporting these events through voluntary reporting or not escalating it to their leadership, they really can't get into the why. And so a great learning experience for me was going out and actually talking to the frontline teams. I created an audit and went around to each bedside in the hospital, and we looked at why they were overriding the guardrails. And it was really more of a conversation rather than trying to play Big Brother. And so that's one thing that I just wanted to highlight today, and we'll kind of continue this conversation. And so all of this, I feel, really relates back to a misplaced focus. Our focus on safety has been centered on how we report that data. We're focused on that we have this quarter, we have to collect this data, and we have to get these numbers, and we spend so much time trying to search through all of our coding data and voluntary reporting and other disparate solutions, trying to find what is actually happening, to the point where we're actually not even given time to improve upon these. We have death by committee, where we're trying to involve so many people and it takes time to draw people together. Everyone's collecting data in different places and they might be collecting the same data, so you're wasting resources. And so all of this has really kind of shifted our focus and taken us away from what we're trying to do, which is drive down patient safety events and improve the care that we provide. Another issue that I've already mentioned, the data is retrospective and collected for reporting purposes. So when we look at the data that we collect for different HAC measures or the CMS measures for the PSI 90s, we are collecting that through different coding data. We might be getting it through voluntary reporting. And what we know is that a lot of this data is not collected consistently, and we're missing, per literature, we're capturing about 10% of patient safety events through voluntary reporting. And so there's a significant opportunity to improve how frequently we're collecting that data and help us, again, get back to that focus of we're trying to be proactive and that we're not just trying to collect the data for the sake of collecting numbers. We're doing it because we want to improve. And if we shift to a more proactive mindset and looking at this data more frequently and in more real time, we have the ability to actually make an impact. So I wanted to pause here and do a poll question and ask how comfortable you feel speaking up about unsafe care in your organization. So Patty, would you mind launching that for me?
Sure, just give me 1 second. We'll launch that. We'll give you time to answer it. Responses are coming in. We'll give about another 20 seconds. Okay, responses have slowed down, so I'm going to close the poll and I will share the results with you.
Alrighty, so it looks like about half of our attendees feel very comfortable speaking up, but as you look at the rest of the numbers, we see a variation in how comfortable they feel speaking up about care. And sorry, can I go back to the slides? Or thank you. And so as we, oh, it's not letting me go back. There we go. So the reason why I brought this poll up is we wanted to highlight culture and the ability to speak up. Really, I feel that culture is the biggest thing that drives our improvement or the lack of improvement. And Dr. Berwick, I think, highlighted this well in quality and safety, how it's separated. When people say quality and safety, what I hear is fruit and bananas. And so really what we're saying is that this is not something that we need to be in silos. We need to be working together in the vision of improving the quality of care. And if we improve the quality of care that we provide, we're going to prevent patient safety events from happening. And so when we think about the responses to that poll and how people feel that they can speak up, that goes back to culture. And we aren't going to improve if we don't have a culture of safety mindset that is encouraging people to speak up, to do the right thing, or to pause processes when they might actually be unsafe. So another, my boss, it has been a great mentor to me. And recently I heard him say that culture will eat technology every day. And as somebody who is believes in healthcare analytics and having good tools, it's true. I have seen it, and I believe that there are great tools, and I believe that even great tools are ineffective in healthcare organizations that don't have a culture of safety mindset. And so really what we're looking at is the behavior and attitude within an organization. Some of those behaviors are what encourage us to do the right thing every day, to speak up when we see unsafe events happening, when we feel that our process is broken, and not just waiting until that patient safety event occurs, but being able to speak up and say, hey, this new gauze bandage that you provided us because it was cheaper is actually causing more rashes with our patients. Or being able to speak up about small things that might not seem big to leadership. They might not even be observed by leadership, but having that dynamic culture between your leadership and your care teams, and also the patients and families, is hugely important. And that's also reflected in how we interact with each other. You know, I've seen many different practices in healthcare organizations where leadership will go and do leadership rounds. They'll engage with patients and families, and those healthcare organizations, they are not perfect, but they do feel comfortable speaking up. And you see that even though they're not getting it right 100% of the time, that their vision is really to improve patient safety and to bring everyone as part of the care team, and making them all feel involved. So what I wanted to kind of shift our discussion on is being innovative. I hear a lot from healthcare organizations that they have always done it this way, and it's too hard to transition to new tools, and it's too hard to try to bring everything together. And I 100% agree with you. Healthcare organizations struggle with so many different tools. They're trying to get data from different places. But don't get stuck in those methods just because it's what you've always done. Try to think outside of the box. Try to sit and think about visions for how you might bring your safety and quality teams together. Stop using disparate tools that where you have voluntary reporting in one place. You might be gathering your PSIs in an Excel spreadsheet. We see, you know, nurses and other healthcare professionals going around with a clipboard and a piece of paper and collecting audits for pressure injuries and their CLABSI bundle maintenance. and then you're collecting all that data in an Excel spreadsheet, and only one person might have access to it. And so this is the issue that I've seen frequently, and what we've been trying to work with. In the last 10 years, I've been working with many healthcare professionals and experts in the industry that have also had the same experience, and I'm sure you all can relate to. I wanted to know what our pressure injury rate was, but I had to go to 4 different places and the numbers weren't the same, and I don't really know where I'm supposed to be getting this number from. And if that's the case, so those of us who work in quality and safety, our leadership do not have insight into that as well, nor do our frontline care teams, and they're really the ones that we need to be arming with data so that they can do better. And so all that to say, to partner with your frontline teams. When I brought that example up of the conversation that I had during the audit that I was doing around the guardrail infusion pump, when I went around, I could tell that the persona that I had as the quality person was I was Big Brother. I was just another nurse with a clipboard coming around to, swat their hands with a ruler and tell them that they had done something wrong. And it didn't take very long where I just sat and I listened and I said, please tell me what the obstacle was that led you to choose doing a basic infusion versus using the guardrail that was inside of the pump. And you uncover so many different problems by just talking to your care teams and going out and asking them what their struggles are. And I know that we all struggle with resources, but the more that you go and you engage with your frontline teams and you involve them in the conversations, the more data you're going to be voluntarily given without actually having to go out and seek it, and the more collaborative your care teams will be. So my next poll question is, I want you to agree through strongly disagreeing. I know where all of my patient safety data lives and can easily analyze it for opportunities. We should have had the Jeopardy music going, Patty.
I didn't think of that, Valerie. That's a great. The answers are still coming in, so I'll give it about another 15 seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share it with you.
Thank you. All right, so we have less than 50% say that they know where their patient safety data lives, and I would say more are leaning towards they don't know where it lives. And this goes back to my point of we don't have one place where it all lives. We collect it in many different areas, and when that happens, we can't drive improvement. And so this is why I wanted to talk about building a comprehensive solution towards patient safety and quality data so that you're armed with the data and you can make others more autonomous for collecting that data. And Patty, thank you. Shifting back. There we go. All right. So when this is just one solution that I wanted to highlight, but one mechanism for collecting all of your data is through surveillance applications. And so this is just one example that exists out there in the healthcare IT vendor solutions. But as we look at the ability to collect data, as I mentioned before, we rely many times on voluntary reporting data. And if you don't have that culture that is necessary for individuals to report, you aren't really going to have a robust data set. And so what you can do is more comprehensively marry that data together through automated surveillance through a trigger tool. Like is being presented here. And so when you're looking at your voluntarily reported data and automated trigger tools, and if you're not familiar with them, I'd be happy to discuss with you later on, but IHI had a global trigger tool methodology where you are going and surveilling and looking through charts for high risk situations that might have been a patient safety event. And so pulling these two types of events together, where this is more automated, it's manually going through behind the scenes, looking at electronic health records and trying to find examples of a DVT or coagulation issues that might have happened with a patient on heparin, or hypoglycemia related to insulin. These are areas where even in the best of cultures, a nurse may not raise their hand and say, I gave my patient insulin, their blood sugar dropped to 30, and then I gave them orange juice and they were fine. Because again, in patient safety, we think of harm as, or patient safety as harm events and errors. We don't really think of the things that we do every day that impact a patient's life. But being able to surveil through the electronic health record and capture that data allows us the opportunity to identify more opportunities for improvement. And again, it doesn't replace voluntary reporting, it just helps enhance that process and gives you a better mousetrap. And again, bringing all this data together, we want to have one solution for actually documenting those events. When we have quality documenting a pressure injury in one way and the risk management team looking at it from a root cause analysis perspective, and they're all looking at it differently in different forms, you don't have a mechanism for doing that decision tree and saying what actually happened here and being able to do your PDCA cycles and being able to improve upon them. So having one standardized form and collection allows you the ability to roll that data up and be able to aggregate it. And then you can visualize it into different harm categories, where they're happening, what service lines, were they present on admission or hospital acquired. You can break them down into different rate charts, look at predictive models. And really what this is just highlighting is the ability to look at your data all in one place. And as you think about everybody that might want to see your patient safety data, it's not just your patient safety and quality teams, it's your board, your C-suite, and even your frontline providers want to know. And the more that you can make this data available in one centralized and safe location, the more we arm our quality and safety teams with the time to go and actually do the improvements and work with the frontline teams on improving those processes versus chasing data and collecting all of that data. They now have that data in one place. Nurse managers can see it. They can go and work with their care team. So now more people are accountable and they're able to access that data, and everyone's working from the same data set as well. And then I mentioned at the very beginning the cost, and we don't want to focus on the cost and patient safety, but really what this does is help to evaluate and to assess how much of an impact is this having on our organization. And what that does for quality and safety leaders is it gives you more, it gives you kind of a fighting chance for more resources, because if you can say to your CFO or your CEO that this is having a $4 million impact on our healthcare organization, if we had a few more infection preventionists or a few more wound care nurses, we would have the ability to improve and drive these costs down, and we're still saving money. And so this is another way, just tying it all together and being able to message that out to all the different professionals in your organization. And when we look at our quality teams, a lot of their focus is on the process bundles. So things like CAUTI bundles, pressure injury bundles, and you can see how if that data is separate from the actual counts of those occurring, it's not really tying it all together. And many hospitals do not have the ability to actually visualize how often are they being compliant with a bundle, nor do and if they don't have that data, their nurse managers and medical unit directors don't have that capacity either. So bringing this all into your patient safety solution, where you can see how am I doing on all these hospital acquired condition bundles, and that ties in with your event reporting data, and you have the ability now to actually make an impact and see when I have when my CAUTI rate is increasing, which bundle are we not being compliant with, which unit is it occurring on most frequently, so that I can go and start working with those teams. But also on the other side, if you know what units are doing very well, you can use them to be champions to improve those processes and to help kind of give more boots on the ground. And I mentioned before about the audit that I had done with the infusion pump. And we hear a lot of healthcare organizations say that they're collecting their point prevalence data on clipboards and having to go and import it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then they're reporting out to NHSN or other agencies. And so having an auditing tool that's customizable within a solution, again, brings all of that data together. Now that data lives in one place, and so your quality and safety teams can see how often that compliance is occurring. And in this example that I'm displaying here, when you look at pressure injury, if you have a pressure injury compliance module where you're looking at your bundle compliance rates, this skin assessment, your device assessment, all of this auditing that you might do can then roll up into that so that you can see your data based on documentation in the electronic health record, but also you're able to see that data as it relates to going around and doing observational studies. So it brings everything all together in one place, but then in the analytics, you're able to actually see how that data relates to your compliance, your rates of harm, and everything is tied together rather than trying to piece it all together in PowerPoints or Excel spreadsheets and other tools that you might be using today. So as we look at what's been discussed today, some of the key takeaways that I wanted to highlight are breaking down the silos in your safety and quality departments. And we all have expertise in these different areas, and it's not to say that there isn't different purposes for these professionals, but as we all partner together and we try to engage with one another and share the data, we will actually save a lot of time and be able to be more impactful. And you can then share that data with your clinical teams and your safety processes. So having the ability to engage your clinical teams by taking this data from this comprehensive solution in your meetings where you might have your monthly team meetings, or a report came in from voluntary reporting and being able to share that back with your care teams. It is very important to communicate with them. I don't know how many of you all can relate, but I know from my own perspective as a nurse, when I would submit a voluntary report, I was very discouraged when I would send, I felt very strongly that I had to report something that I had seen or something that had occurred. And then you fill out the report, you spend the time after your 12-hour shift and you haven't had a break, but you feel it's important enough to report, and then you send it off and it just goes into this abyss of data and you have no idea where it went. Did anybody ever look at it? And a lot of times, the only time I would hear about a patient safety event actually occurring was if one of my nurse friends got fired because they made a mistake, or if something terrible happened, and that's when we talked about it. We didn't talk about the little things that were occurring on the unit that bubble up to those bigger safety issues. And so I would encourage you, as if you've learned nothing today from my discussion, it's that you talk with your clinical teams and involve them in the process, because they are the boots on the ground. They know exactly what's happening and where their struggles are, and they will be your best advocates if you partner with them rather than make them feel as though you're big brothering. And the last thing is to build a comprehensive patient safety solution. Again, I'll just state, the comment earlier of culture eats technology every day. You don't have to have 500 tools to capture all of this data. And actually, if you have it in one place and you build your culture that everyone can build around that one place of patient safety data, you'll get a lot more productivity and you will see a lot more impact on your patient safety rates. And your patients and families will thank you, as well as your staff, as they are prevented from those situations where they might end up harming a patient. And with that, I believe I'm finished, and we'll take questions if there's any time for that.
Thank you, Valerie. That was excellent. And yes, we do have time for questions. So if you have any questions for Valerie, please type them into the questions pane. We have one in here asking, what is your platform for financial analytics?
Financial analytics, in the dashboard that I displayed, we pull in data from different costing data, but we also use literature. And so a lot of that is tied back to different literature that might associate a cost related to a pressure injury or a CLABSI or a CAUTI. And so in the analytics that I displayed, you're able to take the count of events that you've collected in the solution and then tie that cost back to it. So it can either be your own data, or if you don't have that kind of costing data in your own system, then we can associate it to literature. Great question.
Thank you for that. Yes, that was good. We have another question asking how long has Health Catalyst had the Trigger tool?
We had the product for about 3 years now, and so we went to a generally available product in July of 2018, but we've been working on it for about 3.5 years.
Great, thank you. This references back to your answer from the last question. There are so many quality databases to pull and reference for the events when you were talking about cost. Do you have a top 3 recommendation?
We have our own literature, and you're right. There are a lot of different data elements that will go against one another, and we have a standardized solution that we have for the top hack events. I can pull the study and share that with Patty, and if anybody's interested. But we don't really pull it from the databases. Usually what we do is an analysis on the actual cost related to your organization. So how does it impact your length of stay? How does it impact the actual patient care? So it's more of an analysis that we conduct based on all the data pulled from and all the sources within your organization, and then we assign a cost based on actual patient data.
Great, thank you. There's one other, and it's a comment. When you were talking about the punitive damages, and it said it's unfortunately true. Never hear about the events, and reporting is still punitive.
Yep, and honestly, that is something that I feel so very strongly about. And we just did a Patient Safety Day presentation for World Patient Safety Day at Health Catalyst, and last year the focus was on patient safety events, not workforce safety. And I shared a story about when I had caused a medication error, and that was 15 years ago, and it still sticks with me today. And luckily my patient had a good outcome, but I didn't report that event because I didn't even know where I was supposed to report it. But I don't know that if I did, I would have felt comfortable, because I had seen others that I worked with have punitive responses to events that they escalated. And I really hope that we'll see a shift in culture, and I really think it's going to take a lot of effort from leadership to engage their teams and to make them feel safe, and to not just use the buzzwords, but really you have to make them feel like you're really going to carry through that with that just culture, and that you're there to help them and partner with them to do what's best for their patients. And again, going back to that, we all came into patient safety or to healthcare to do the right thing. We don't want to harm patients. And so remember that as you're working with your frontline teams.
So true, thank you. And somebody just said thanks for sending the literature reference. So when I get that from Valerie, we will post it on our webpage. And again, at the bottom of every slide is our webpage for this event, so you can find all the information that you need there. At this time, we want to thank you, Valerie, for sharing your knowledge with us. We really appreciate it. And we hope you have a great day. If anybody needs further information, you can reach out to me and I can connect you to Valerie.
Yep, thank you so much.
So our next section is our mental health panel. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator for the mental health panel, Steve Love. He is the president of the Dallas-Fort Worth Hospital Council and has been very instrumental throughout all of this COVID pandemic. You've probably seen him on the news. We are very proud of him, and he was recently nominated for a Lifetime Healthcare Award. So congratulations, Steve. And at this time, I will turn it over to you, and I will give the first panelist the keyboard.
Thank you, Patty, and it's a real pleasure to be here. Mental health, as you know, is something that we really need to focus on. Today, we have 4 expert panelists, and what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce each one, let them present, move to the next one, and then we'll have questions. Our first panelist is Lisa M. Boone Reddick. She's the Senior Director of Learning and Development for My Health, My Resources of Tarrant County. Lisa has been in senior leadership roles for 20 plus years, and she currently serves as the co-chair of the Dallas-Fort Worth Hospital Council Foundation Mental Health First Aid Committee. Lisa has been an advocate for mental health first aid for over 5 years, and we really appreciate her service. So I introduce to you Lisa Boone Reddick.
And you should have control of the keyboard.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you, Patty. My Health, My Resources of Tarrant County has a mission that states we change lives. And we do that through our values of we care. We connect people in our community. We provide access to services. We link people to resources, and we empower people. We've been doing this for several years, since 1969, and we offer services in mental health, intellectual and developmental disabilities, substance use, early childhood intervention, criminal justice system support, homelessness, and veterans. Today, I'm going to share a Texas perspective of adapting to unique times. And as you all know, the unique times are all about the pandemic. And I am supposed to have control, but I am, there we go. Okay. If any of you are feeling overwhelmed or mentally exhausted because of the changes that have been brought on by COVID-19, you're not alone. It's impacted millions of Americans physically, mentally, and emotionally. And Mental Health First Aid is an international training program proven to be effective. Much like CPR, Mental Health First Aid educates people so that it destigmatizes mental illness. There we go. And it helps people recognize the signs and symptoms and risks factors of mental illness and addictions. And it helps people identify how they can find help for others and resources for people who are experiencing mental illness or addiction. It increases those who have been trained in it. It increases their confidence, the likelihood that they can help someone else. And it also helps us focus in on our own mental health. Sorry about that, folks. It teaches you the skills necessary to provide that help, and so that you can help someone that's in a crisis. More than 2,000 people across the United States have been trained in mental health first aid, and there's more than 15,000 instructors. The approach that is taken is one of algae. We call it algae because it teaches people how to assess the person's risks of suicide or harm, to listen to them non-judgmentally, give reassurance and information, encourage professional help, and encourage self-help and support strategies. It's an evidence-based program. It began in Australia, and it provides people with the tools that they need to help each other and to recognize signs and symptoms and help ourselves. The program improves people's mental health. It increases understanding of mental health issues and treatment, connects people with care, and reduces the stigma. Within our state, we have taken it very seriously. And on a state level, there are several bills that support the teaching of mental health first aid throughout all communities in the state. HHSC works with all of the local mental health authorities throughout the state. There's 39 of us to deliver mental health first aid. We have a special initiative for schools, for teachers, for all in the school programs. We also have a program for universities, and we all have mental health first aid coordinators who work within the community to provide services and educate people about mental health first aid. As I mentioned, there are 39 local mental health authorities throughout the state, and we all work in concert to educate our communities. We're passionate champions immersed in community collaboration and partnerships that educate people about mental health first aid so they can become first aiders and we can all help each other. So far in the state, we have trained close to 10,000 people over the years. Within HHSC, there are several different collaborations with the Texas Education Agency, School Safety Center, all of the community centers, which are the local mental health authorities, the Education Service Centers throughout the state, Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, and Disaster Behavioral Health. My Health, My Resources of Tarrant County focuses on mental health first aid within Tarrant County. And within Tarrant County, we have trained over 5,000 people, whether they are instructors, educators, or community members. Our focus is to expand our reach and educate as many people as we possibly can within our community. The same is true for all of the local mental health authorities throughout the state of Texas. Who receives mental health first aid training? All of the school districts, nonprofit organizations, faith-based community, PTAs, people within our community, you, colleges, police, fire departments, hospitals, cities, counties, communities, municipalities. We have relationships and partnerships and contracts with several of these entities that you see up here on the slide. We work closely with them to identify what their needs are and create specific strategic plans to work closely with them so that we educate their populations. As was mentioned earlier, there's a North Texas Mental Health First Aid Collaborative that is spearheaded by the Hospital Council. And I have the honor and privilege of being one of the chairs of this. And we represent 40 different members of the community with expertise in public and community health, prevention, and really focus on expanding our reach and training 10,000 people in mental health first aid. That is our goal. We're in 16 counties in North Texas, and we all work collaboratively together. That involves several of the local mental health authorities also working in concert to expand our reach and train 10,000 laypersons in mental health first aid in the 16 counties that we represent. We really have a vision to reduce preventable crisis admissions through a targeted hospital utilization methodology, and that includes a wide breadth of education. This idea came from Baylor Scott and White, where they looked at the University of Florida Health, Jacksonville, and an approach that they had to provide similar services in their area. Now you see in front of you just some of the organizations that are part of this initiative. Our results so far have been training over 7,000 people in mental health first aid. We have 25 of our community members that are part of this initiative that are also trainers or instructors. We have bilingual instructors, we have collaborative funding, and we have collaborative outreach. We work together strategically to make sure that we are reaching our community and that we are reducing the stigma and educating people in mental health first aid.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Excellent presentation. Our next panelist is Tamara McJunkin, who is a licensed professional counselor supervisor, has worked in the field of behavioral health for over 10 years. She's currently managing the centralized intake team for Texas Health Resources Behavioral Health. So let's please welcome Tamara.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning. I'd like to share with you a bit today about the significance of telehealth as a service delivery model within behavioral health, specifically a bit about its utility, feasibility, and effectiveness. So as we well know, there we go. As we well know, Texas ranks last in access to mental health care. When it comes to the question of utility and usefulness, the answer is simple. As Texas ranks last, there's certainly a need. There is now, and has been for quite some time, an evident need for behavioral health service delivery method that provides some greater utility in our community. That need for greater accessibility resonated deeply with us here at Texas Health Resources Behavioral Health, as our Texas Health mission is to improve the health of the people and the communities we serve. The need for greater utility became clearer as the behavioral health assessment requests rose steadily amongst our non-behavioral health entities year after year. The increasing demand was certainly felt by our crisis clinician team, as we are a team of 23 clinicians completing an average of 1,200 assessments per month and serving patients in over 120 of our non-behavioral health entities in over a dozen counties. So with such a small but highly leveraged team, that need for change in service delivery became ever apparent. So in looking for kind of the platform to facilitate that change, we partnered with our digital experience team to look for just the right software solution. We knew we wanted something that would certainly be able to be implemented enterprise-wide, so that that goal of feasibility was met. So in 2019, in January, we began phasing in the telehealth delivery model, and in April of 2019, we flipped the switch, making telehealth our primary means of service delivery for crisis assessments system-wide. So having just that right platform in use system-wide certainly put Texas Health Behavioral Health ahead of the COVID curveball in terms of preparedness. So as we were certainly well equipped to deploy a virtual service delivery offering for all of our intensive outpatient programs, and also use that as a virtual model to provide services to those patients admitted to our COVID positive unit there at Texas Health Springwood, which certainly decreased risk of exposure for our care providers, and also gave us the means to have a virtual visitation for those patients as well. So in terms of gauging its effectiveness, we did in fact achieve our desired result there. The telehealth has proven effective in driving down our response times for crisis assessments cutting that response time in half from about 60 minutes from the time of the request to about 30 minutes currently. As that volume has continued to rise, that response time has stayed steady using the virtual delivery method. It's positively impacted our emergency departments in terms of dwell times system-wide, which has also in turn had a positive impact on patient safety and patient satisfaction overall. And as we all well know, anytime we can connect a patient to the appropriate care in an effective and efficient manner, it's a win for everyone. The acceptance rates for level of care recommendations has increased among our patient population. And we've also seen a decrease in our no-show rates for intensive outpatient programming. And this has allowed our care team, of course, to minimize their risk of exposure while still continuing to provide, quality care for our patient population. Having a virtual delivery model, is fitting in now, I guess you could say, to the way that our lives are have all kind of gone virtual or digital over this year. So for Texas Health Behavioral Health, telehealth and telepsychiatry will continue to be a growing service delivery offering, as it has certainly proven its feasibility and utility and effectiveness throughout our service line.
Tamara, thank you very much. I really appreciate that great information. We're going to move on now to our next panelist, Sherry Cusimano. Sherry is the current Administrative Director for Community Education at Medical City Green Oaks and is the current President of the North Texas affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness that we all refer to as NAMI. She's an RN, a licensed chemical dependency counselor, and is currently working on her doctoral degree in nursing practice with a focus on mental health and public policy with the Nova Southeastern University. Sherry, welcome.
Sherry, you may be on mute.
Yes, I just took myself off. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, thank you, Steve, for that great introduction. I'm honored to be here and to be talking about this. First of all, I want to point out that my background, of course, is in mental health, and I work with people who live with mental health disorders all of the time. But that's not really what this presentation is about. This presentation is about mental health challenges that probably all of us have faced over the last several months, but it's more targeted towards people who may be returning to work after a lengthy absence. And I will tell you that at Medical City Green Oaks, where I work, we've had an interest in that and a program for that for many, many years. Our program was designed for people who had perhaps been on disability for a long time and were, working at getting back to work after a lengthy absence due to that disability. But now all of a sudden, that same program is relevant to a large group of people, right? Not everybody obviously needs a program to deal with that. Some people do well with, just everybody's response to that is different. Some people may need individual therapy to help with that. Some people may just talk to their friends and get through the stress. So this presentation is just going to be targeted to talking about the particular things that people go through with that. Okay, First of all, I want to start by talking about the scope of the problem, and I want to do a little framing of what, it's going to be a little redundant probably for some of you, but a reframe of what we've been through. I remember clear back as early as say February or March, hearing on the news about this strange virus in China that was creating a crisis for them, and seeing these machines that were working furiously to build a hospital in 3 days to accommodate the enormous volume of people that were impacted by that. And I remember my husband and I watching that thinking, wow, look at that, what's going on? And then it wasn't all that much later, maybe the end of the month, that, or beginning of March perhaps, I began to hear about how it was affecting us in the US in the Northeast, right? And some in New York. Then about March 13th, we all heard the president declare a state of national emergency. Now that was a little alarming for some of us, maybe shocking, because we'd all maybe been lulled into thinking it wouldn't happen to us. Now, I think most of us in healthcare actually were getting reports that it might come our way, but for the average citizen, that, you know, that was kind of shocking, I believe. Then fast forward another couple of weeks, and it was March 31st that Greg Abbott announced in Texas that unless we were essential workers, we needed to remain home, and our schools were closed. Now that's a little shocking, right? That's different. I've been around for many, many years, and I have never been through anything like that. So many of us might have had our children at home all of a sudden and had to figure out what to do so we could continue to work. I would say that the majority of us in healthcare probably continued to work, but we had numerous other things we had to think about. I have a good friend who works for Deloitte, and she shared a report with me that they did. It was, she estimated, they determined that about 2.7 billion people were impacted by those stay-at-home orders. That globally, that's a lot of people. More than 4 out of 5 people were impacted by those stay-at-home orders. And we were told we were safer at home. So think about that for a while. Now, I think a lot of us might have had some cabin fever. But one way or another, it's a big change, right? And we had to adapt. Then come about May, we started to reopen, and people were being told they could go back to work. Now, I don't know how it was in your family, but in mine, my husband and daughter both had been working out of home for about a month, and I had continued to work. I consider myself to be lucky because my structure, the structure of my life, did not change that dramatically. So my stress was probably a little bit lower, although I was very concerned about, you know, all the things that were going on. I know many of the people that continued to work were concerned about their own health and the health of their families. Because of the nature of the work I do, that wasn't a stress that I had so much, but I know that many frontline healthcare workers had those kinds of stresses, and we saw that in the news. So it wasn't so easy for many of us who did continue to work. Let me see if I can move this again. There we go. Returning to work was different for everybody. You know, Some people were thrilled. It was like, wow, I finally get to see my colleagues again. I am so sick of being in the house. For other people, it was scary. My daughter was very fearful. She worked in a tanning salon and she was afraid. She has a lot of comorbid conditions and she felt very vulnerable. She was very, very worried about what it might mean for her health. For some people, they're just anxious because here we go, there's another change in my routine. Some people that I spoke with were afraid that because of the stress they had been under for as long as they'd been under it, they just weren't sure that they would be able to function in their job in the same way, even though they had been able to work at home. And let's face it, some people were just angry. I think we've seen a lot of anger during the pandemic. I think that's part of what the mask issue has been about. Some people just react to these things with anger. Everybody does it in their own way. So, when talking with people such as my daughter who were stressed about returning to work, one of the things that I told her to do was to contact her employer and to find out as much as she could about what would be going on when she returned to work. We talked, her and I talked extensively about keep doing the things you know to do, right? The frequent hand washing and all those things we've been hearing for months, frankly. Also, take good care of yourself, eat well, get plenty of exercise. We all know those things that we can do to take care of ourselves. So I kind of reminded her of that. But as much as you can, try to know what to expect and, talk with other people if you need to. In fact, get help dealing with your stress if you need additional help. If you're an employer, and many of you are, I think it's important to think about what your employees may be going through. I just read a study yesterday that JAMA has published, and it's an open study. You can find open access on the internet. If you would like for me to give that information, I certainly will. But in this article, they had done a study and determined that the prevalence of the symptoms of depression in the US right now are threefold higher than they were prior to the epidemic. So, or prior to the pandemic. So people have been impacted. It has affected our mental health. Even people that have been resilient and functioned well for years, they've never had a mental health problem in their life, may be actually struggling. So consider what your employees may be facing, and especially if they've been working from home for a long time and you're just calling them back. A recent MetLife survey found that 74% of workers are very worried about at least one aspect of their life as a result of the virus. So they might be worried about their finances, they could be worried about their kids and how they're doing in school, whether or not their kids will be exposed to the virus. They may be worried about actually getting the virus themselves. They may have lost a loved one. And they may be worried about what expectations the workplace will have for them. I think if you are a manager, there are certain things that you can do to assist your employees with their return to work. You can, one of the things that I would definitely recommend is educating your supervisors to be aware of the signs of emotional distress. One thing you could really do that would be a gift for both your managers as well as your frontline workers is to offer the mental health first aid class that Lisa talked about earlier. I am an instructor for that, and it's a phenomenal class. It would teach your managers ways that they could interact with staff and recognize problems and really be of assistance during this challenging time. Also, it's important to encourage your staff to seek help if they need it, and make sure that they have access to the resources that are available for them as a result of your workplace, such as an EAP or that kind of thing. And take advantage of your human resource leaders, because they're usually very good at noticing if staff have issues, and they know a great deal about the resources available. So it would be a good idea to maybe have them circulate among the staff and check to see how people are doing. Sending information ahead of time about what the employees can expect, and we're glad to see you coming back, we look forward to seeing you, can be very, very helpful. And please remember that your leaders may need support too. I think that's important. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about this important issue. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sherry. We appreciate that great information. And now we're going to move to our fourth panelist. We're delighted that we've got Leanne Franklin with us from the JPS Health Network. She's the Executive Director of Spiritual Care and Ethics at JPS. She is a certified chaplain, a mindfulness practitioner, a grief specialist, and also a yoga teacher. Leanne takes the approach that she focuses on mind, body, and spirit as she supports patients, family members, and staff. Leanne, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Stephen. It's such a privilege to be here. I appreciate all the panelists. And Sherry, thanks for teeing me up. I'm going to continue on to strike the notes that you've been hitting. When I was asked to speak about how JPS cares for the mental health of our team members, I happily said yes, because caring for our team members is the highest priority of JPS as an organization, and it's my personal passion. So in our time together, let's see.
If you're having issues, Leanne, I'm happy to move the slide for you. Just say next slide when you're ready.
Sorry, it's not working for me. Yes, next slide, please. Oh, one prior to that. Yep. So in our time together, I'm going to be talking about the JPS belief that our patients in our community receive the highest level of care when it's delivered by team members who themselves feel cared for. And then I'll talk about how we do that through the efforts of our Care for the Caregiver team. And I'll finally give some examples of our mind, body, spirit approach to care. So next slide, please. At JPS, our mission is to transform healthcare delivery for the communities we serve. So that's our destination. But how we get there is our rules of the road. So we have 3 rules, and these rules guide us. They're on our employee IDs, they're on our performance reviews, and most importantly, they're in our hearts. Ask anybody in the halls of JPS and anybody can recite them. So rule 1, we own it. We own our responsibilities, we're accountable, we show up to work like it's our home because it is our home, and we're inviting patients and families into our home. So we know it's so important that we own our attitude. If we're feeling burned out or resentful or fearful or stressed, our patients are going to pick up on that. They're going to feel it. And so our second rule is seek joy. For many of our patients, what would be our worst day is their best day. Illness and trauma is just one of the many challenges that they face. So we're very intentional about creating an environment of joy so that our patients and our team members can experience this environment of welcome and nurture and care. Our third rule, don't be a jerk, well, that speaks for itself. So how do we do this? How do we help 7,200 employees own it, seek joy, and not be a jerk, even and especially when it gets hard? Next slide, please. We've created a Care for the Caregiver team, and this team consists of the 4 people you see on this slide, and together we lead teams that provide support for over 1,000 team members every single week. And when I say support, I mean a mind, body, spirit approach, because we know that trauma-informed care teaches us that trauma, stress, compassion, fatigue, burnout, fear, these are all embodied experiences. They live in our cells. They affect our minds, our spirits, and our bodies. So our approach to well-being addresses all 3 of those, mind, body, and spirit. So I'm going to share a few ways that we do that. First, we're going to talk about care for the mind. Next slide, please. We offer evidence-based mindfulness tools to our staff members. So we do this for individuals and to teams. At the beginning of the pandemic, we started offering a mindfulness moment phone line. So team members can call up anytime, day or night, to hear a 1-minute mindfulness tool or perspective that can inspire or equip them in their next shift. The message changes every day. And then we also offer tools to individuals and teams. We meet with them in person or now virtually is a big, we do that. We have virtual team meetings a lot where we lead sessions. We also lead sessions that teach on, like, for instance, the power of intentional breathing or on gratitude or on how to name and process emotions. We try to make it fun. So one way that we teach these mindfulness tools is with our Wheel of Flourishing. So you can see Chaplain Sylvia there in the picture on the screen. We have a wheel that we spin, and wherever it lands, we land on a mindfulness tool, and then we teach the tool and everybody does it together. What I love about sharing these mindfulness tools is it equips our team members and they have more and more tools in their toolkit, but they're often also able to share this with patients. So, you know, they learn a wonderful breathing technique that can calm them or restore them, and they can share that with a patient who may be going through anxiety or stress or fear. Next slide, please. We also care for the body. As I said, trauma, including the trauma of caring for trauma patients, stress and burnout and fear, all of these emotions live in our bodies, in our cells. So we care for bodies, the bodies of our team members. We've partnered with local EMDR therapists who offer free individual EMDR telesessions to staff members. For those of you who don't know what EMDR is, it stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy, and it's an evidence-based treatment for PTSD. So it uses bilateral stimulation to really calm the body very quickly and very effectively. So we're offering this free to any team member, day or night, who might want a telesession. And we bring these trauma therapists to team meetings as well. So I partner with the trauma therapist, and we'll meet with the team, and we can do stress reducing exercises, find ways to be calm together, and they can take these tools and use them then beyond our session. And evidence shows the benefits of shaking and moving the body. So here you see on the picture a picture of a shake it out and dance session that we're having with one team over on the grassy area of our campus. Here they're dancing to I Will Survive COVID. So they moved and danced, and just after 20 minutes felt so much better. And then we care for the spirit. Next slide, please. We have Schwartz Rounds, which the goal of Schwartz Rounds is to create a compassionate space where team members can work through a theme or an issue and everybody feel on the same page, process emotions in a compassionate environment. And since COVID started, we've been doing Schwartz Rounds virtually. We have them once a month and hear from frontline workers about how they're dealing with the stress of COVID. And next month, we're having it on the effects of COVID on the home front. So we do it day shift and night shift. And again, it's a time for everybody to just hear how COVID is affecting them. And it helps us to have compassion for one another and know that we are not alone. We've also added a daily prayer line to care for the spirit. So team members can call in and hear an inclusive prayer while also leaving prayer requests and know that these will be prayed for. Another intervention that we've done is when everybody started wearing masks, we started giving out personal individual aromatherapy. So we have little cotton squares that are immersed in lavender essential oils, and we call them essential oils for essential workers, so that everybody can breathe in the aroma of care and nurture and the calming scent of lavender. And then we have our mainstay, our Soul Cafe. So here you'll see a picture. You see Chaplain Steve on the floor. Soul Cafe, we've been doing this for years. So whenever any team needs a little bit extra TLC, a chaplain shows up with a card of hot tea or lattes or chocolates or warm cookies and music. And it's really a gathering place where workers can gather around and receive support and give support to one another, because evidence says that the frontline workers experience care best from one another. So it's a way to shine the light on their own resilience and to share the ways that they're working through the challenges of healthcare with one another. And last slide. Lastly, I want to share about our Hope Tree. Sometime in July, we noticed that joy was being clouded by fear and uncertainty as the pandemic was going on and on and on. And so we created the Hope Tree. And this is a 6-foot birch tree and has twinkly little fairy lights on it. And so we took the Hope Tree throughout the hospital, and we invited team members to write their hopes and add them to the tree. It was a huge hit. So we now have over 1,000 hopes hanging on the trees. And whenever a specific unit or floor or department needs hope, we just bring the Hope Tree and we let it stay there for a couple days. So it just, it shows that even in the darkness of worry or fear or uncertainty, there is hope, and it shines bright because we are people of hope, and we nurture and sustain and create hope with every shift, with every team members, because we know that we are all in this together. So these are just a few of the ways that JPS uses mind, body, spirit approaches to inspire joy, even in the toughest of times. My hope today is that all of this can inspire you to provide gentle, compassionate, and creative care for yourselves, because we know that only when we care for ourselves can we truly care for others. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share and to learn from you all.
Thank you, Leanne. Great job. Patty, quick question for you. How much time do we have left?
We have officially only a few minutes, but not many people are leaving. So let the audience know that if you do need to leave, feel free if you have another commitment. But if you'd like to hang on for our questions and answers, we'll be here until we get them taken care of.
Do you have any current questions, Patty?
One that I think some people may be wanting to know the answer also is who do I contact for MHFA this was in particular for her child's school's PTA. So who do they contact if they want to get mental health first aid training?
Well, if they want mental health first aid training, they can send an email, and I'll make sure this is in the information, to mhfa@mhmrtc.org.
Thank you. And while we're waiting for any other questions, I'll do what's kind of a lightning rod, which is if you can answer the question in about 45 seconds. And Lisa, since you had the first one, we'll go to Tamara. Tamara, during this crisis, and if you're dealing with a behavioral health crisis, can telehealth and virtual service be effective?
I would say absolutely, Steve. Being able to get in kind of quickly and efficiently, partner with that patient, get the information needed to make sure that we're getting them connected to the care that that is warranted can certainly be done in this crisis safely and effectively.
That's great. Sherry, you mentioned challenges in going back to work. Out of all the people you've worked with and helped, what would you say is the biggest challenge?
I think the biggest challenge that people are facing right now is what we're seeing a lot more of is anxiety and depression. And it's just, the fears are numerous. They're different for everybody. But we're seeing a lot more of anxiety and depression. And just, you know, we do a lot of role play with people to help them to practice skills they may need to get through some of those challenges. We talk about some of the stress management kinds of things that were addressed in the last presentation. But I think that depression and anxiety are the biggies.
Leanne, let me ask you this. It's been since about 1918 since we faced the magnitude of a pandemic that we're facing now. So it's pretty hard to plan for it. What in your mind during this pandemic has been probably the biggest challenge in meeting the needs of your staff at JPS?
That's a great question. You know, none of us knows how to do a pandemic because most of the people who were around in 1918 aren't here anymore. So we're all having to be creative. I think the greatest challenge is also the greatest opportunity. And that is what we do best is to be really, truly present with those who are right there in front of us. So when we can really be present to what the needs are in the moment and we can anticipate what the needs are going forward, it gives us the opportunity to be very creative to do what's needed. So what worked yesterday probably won't work today or tomorrow, but that's where we can all work together because we're all in this together. So to discern, okay, so what do we need in this moment? And that's where like the hope tree came up. Nobody had hope tree in our toolkit, you know, but just knowing how fearful and afraid, and that's the same word, but, you know, uncertain, and everybody was, we thought, okay, what can we do now? So it's, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. And so I actually am really excited about the opportunities to create together how we are going to not only get through, but how we're going to create a new future that sustains all of us.
Thanks. Patty, do you have any questions?
We have one very nice comment that thank you for the hope and inspiration to Leanne. And there's a question also, Leanne, is the anxiety and depression mainly with JPS staff or with patients or with both?
That's a great question. I think every single person is experiencing the effects of the pandemic in a different way. And so, you know, that's why I love our approach at JPS, that we care for staff and patients. We care for everybody at the same time. And there's such a reward in that by caring for our staff, they are able to bring that to our patients to a fuller and richer extent. So, you know, we're all in this together. And my main thing is if we can start with compassionate care for ourselves and extend that to others, then we're going to see such beautiful benefits.
Well, Patty, I certainly want to thank the panelists. They did an outstanding job, and it's really been a pleasure for me and an honor to moderate such an esteemed panel during this Patient Safety Summit. So big round of virtual applause to them for their great job, and we'll turn it back over to you, Patty.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you to everybody who participated today. I think it was an awesome session. As we wrap up the third session of the Patient Safety Summit, remember that the recording, give us a few days, but the recording and handouts will be on our webpage for you to view. And if our Valerie, our speaker, gets us the other literature reference, we'll post that there for you too. The questions that we were not able to get to for the PFAC portion or the patient and family engagement, we will post those on our webpage also. So at this time, we will end session 3. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you at session 4 on October 1st.